G'day there guys, Marky here once again, and welcome back to another episode of r/relationship advice stories from Reddit with your host Marky. Now with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the barbie, subscribe if you haven't already, please, and enjoy today's bloody good stories. Let's go. Posted by user Still Stormy, titled, "Am I the asshole for telling my daughter, who is facing homelessness, that only her and the baby can move in with me and not her husband?" The husband has lived in their apartment for a number of years. The owners recently sold it, and the new ones are moving in, so my daughter and her husband have to move. The problem is that rents have gone up dramatically. The rents they are paying is $1,100 for a one-bedroom, which I thought was a lot. But now that I'm trying to help them find a place, most are now going for around $2,000 a month or more. They can't afford this. My daughter knows that she is always welcome at home. Granted, a baby complicates things. I wasn't happy about her having a baby. She's young, just turned 22, but I would never deny her housing. However, I can't stand her husband. Let's just call him Aaron for simplicity's sake. I wouldn't invite Aaron over for dinner, let alone let him live with me. Aaron is in his mid-30s, criminal history, hair-trigger temper, chronically immature, and has one hell of a jealous and possessive streak that has caused strain in their relationship, which I obviously do not approve of. Honestly, when she told me she was pregnant, I finally thought that we'd be rid of Aaron. I genuinely thought that he's exactly the kind of man to ditch. They've been on and off over and over since he was about 18 or 19. Alas, if anything, it made him cling to her tighter. They had a very rushed wedding, and this is their longest stint together without any breakups. Just over a year. There's still been a fair share of dramatics, of course, but I'm surprised they've made it this far. Even so, I simply don't want to live with Aaron. I don't like him. I don't want him around me. I'd go above and beyond for my daughter and the baby. They can stay as long as they need, but not him. Obviously, this has created a rift between my daughter and I. She doesn't want to live separately from Aaron. I told her then she needs to figure out alternative arrangements. Well, their move-out date is rapidly approaching, the 15th of December, and they still have not been able to find a place, and she's panicking. She's been begging me to let them stay. I reiterated my terms. Aaron simply cannot stay here. This led to a lot of tears and some angry words. Namely, me being an asshole. I can genuinely see why she might think that, but I also have to think about myself and my own sanity. In the comments, Just Simona says, "If she's adult enough to get pregnant and get married, she's also adult enough to figure things out. Either she accepts your terms, as it's your house, or they can stay with friends or his family. You can't have it both ways. Not the asshole." OP replies, "Unfortunately, that's not really how things work. I realize that even adults need help from time to time. Sometimes a lot of help, and that's okay. Heck, I need help occasionally too. For my own sanity, my helpfulness has its own limits, and I hope my daughter will eventually understand this. I realize they are in a tough spot. The vast majority of her friends still live at home, whereas the ones that don't live with multiple roommates and aren't in a position to help. Aaron, from what I've gathered, doesn't really have family beyond a brother in another province. I know he's done a lot of work on himself, so says my daughter, and has distanced himself a great deal from his former friends. I realize their options are extremely limited, but like I said, my ability to help has its limits." Shut Up and Play Ball says, "Not the asshole. It's your house and your life. You are being very generous in your offer. I get that she doesn't want to be separated from her husband, but just because he's worked on himself does not wash away all of the hurt that he's caused. Stand strong, do not be guilted into this." Not the asshole. He's a man in his 30s who went after a teen? Gross. OP says, "My thoughts precisely. Though to be fair to Aaron, I suspect women his age are wise enough to steer clear." Reticent Redhead replies, "For what it's worth, we had a beloved female family member involved with a male romantic interest that was so very unsuitable that we finally had to ban him from holiday meals because he picked ugly fights with a girlfriend's other family members, leaving them and many others in tears. He is no longer welcome at any of our homes because he simply cannot help but antagonize, well, everyone. His license had been suspended, so he'd show up with his big tumbler of booze, belligerent, chauffeured by our relative. Meanwhile, he'd Eddie Haskell kiss up to our elder relatives, hoping to get in on her inheritance. Our elders weren't stupid, and told her that if she continued the romance, her inheritance was in jeopardy. He finally disappeared. Thankfully, our female relative was smart enough to listen and chose to forego the romance. Was a rough few years though. I guess my take on this situation is that you're in very much a rock and a hard place situation, but you also recognize that even adults sometimes need a lot of help, and that is okay. You kind of say that him not living with the daughter isn't an option, but you also don't want him to live there. I feel like, given that set of circumstances and that they've been so on again and off again for such a long time, he can figure out his own life without having to live with you until these two figure out their own housing situation. I don't think you'd be an asshole for having those boundaries. Though I understand that's a potential deal breaker for the relationship between you and your daughter, so this is a hard one to toss up. And now, onto the update. I do believe because of my anger and frustration, I exaggerated Aaron's flaws in my post below. Has he struggled with his temper? Yes, but I should not have described it as hair trigger. I have never thought of him as dangerous. I have never feared for my daughter's safety, nor my own. I also described him as jealous and possessive, and while I do see some of those tendencies, he's never tried to restrict her movements or isolate her. She's always dealt with a tremendous amount of anxiety, particularly when it comes to social situations. As much as I loathe to admit it, in this regard, he's been a wonderful cheerleader. He could keep her at home where she feels most secure, but he does truly encourage her to get out and be adventurous. As for his criminal record, it's all below the age of 24. He has not been in trouble with the law since. It still makes me uncomfortable, but I can admit that he's been stable. In all the time that I've known him, he's had no issue holding down a job, paying his rent, etc. What bothers me most is the age gap. I can't explain that away or change it. It is what it is. It makes me uncomfortable. With that said, people here keep saying that he's a predator and groomer, but I just don't see that. I could very well be blind or naive. For now, however, I will defend him in this regard. Anyways, if posting here has shown me anything, it's that Aaron is not nearly as bad as I had built him up in my mind. So many people here are imagining a monster. He's just a guy. He means well. He's trying, he is still irritating, opinionated, immature, and talks too much, sounds like me, but he does try his damnedest to take care of my daughter. He is a capable, present father, and he loves being one. They are married. He is family. Lots of people have stated that they are a unit. They come together or not at all. I've started to agree. It's for that reason that I've decided to allow them all to stay with me while they figure things out. In the comments, that weird thing what says, OP. He's angry, jealous, dramatic, possessive. They break up all the time. He has a criminal history and almost a 10-year age gap. People think negatively of him. OP replies, y'all are so mean. He's great, actually. You know, it's probably over 10 years, right? 22 and mid-30s. Interesting that his exact age isn't mentioned. Yeah, I'd agree with this 100%. Man started out with criminal history, hair-trigger temper, chronically immature, and has one hell of a jealous and possessive streak that caused a strain in their relationship, which I obviously do not approve of. Then he backtracked all of that extensively and in detail, only to end up with the actual things he doesn't like being the age gap and irritating, opinionated, immature, and he talks too much. Criminal history? Oh, it's all from before he even met the daughter, and I'm guessing petty, given that he was shocked people would worry that the guy might be violent. Hair trigger temper? Oh no, he wouldn't hurt a butterfly. Literally, all of these things were exaggerated to the moon. Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if he was actually late 20s. Still too big, especially given when they started dating. If it's real, it sounds like someone who had a legitimate concern but couldn't force his daughter to leave, and other people either downplayed his concerns or told him that the more he tried to intervene, the worse he would make it. So when he comes to Reddit, he has to convince people that this guy sucks badly enough to intervene in the relationship. So then he exaggerates to hell without thinking through the consequences of what those exaggerations mean. And half the people who assume the husband is abusive are telling him that even if the husband is worse than he says, he's still doing the wrong thing, and then describe the consequences of treating someone trapped in a DV relationship this way, and he has a holy shit moment. Both because the guy isn't as bad as he said, and because he finally gets why no one else was on his side. Plus, commenters probably gave advice with regards to custody, which probably made him realize that he was trying to get rid of the father of his grandchild, and he thinks the guy is a good dad. And by mentioning custody fights, also realizes that the guy won't simply abandon his child even if his marriage doesn't work out, and probably finally thought through the ramifications for the child not having a loving father, or the ramifications for his daughter if they split up and had split custody. An arrangement the dad was essentially trying to force, even though they hadn't split up. I love your detailed explanation, and I also have my own simple explanation why Reddit's "go no contact with them and burn all bridges" works so well, despite being simplified. First case are real victims of abuse who need to hear that some internet strangers give them permission to leave and put themselves on first place. Second case are abusers, stalkers, angry estranged parents, and exes. When Reddit tells them, leave the other person alone, it's actually also the harm reduction. And there are people who, when told, burn the bridges, will come to realization, wait a minute, I actually like that bridge and want to keep it. It's natural. Everybody wants to react like that. It's only when the person can't think about any redeeming quality that would justify the troubles is when they burn the bridge. Halo Spite says, I love it when OPs are horrified by people agreeing with them. My favorite updates are basically, wow, okay, never mind, y'all are batshit, I was wrong. Daughter just turned 22, started dating the guy when she was 18 or 19, so roughly 4 years ago. Dude is mid-30s now, so he was roughly 30 when they started dating. A 30-year-old dating an 18-year-old is already raising red flags, and not little ones. Getting her pregnant at 20 and keeping the kid, and becoming even more attached, that just screams bad news. If anything, if they move in with OP, at least they'll be able to keep an eye on the guy. For real, the people in this thread saying, wow, I love that OP recognized that she was wrong, are crazy. OP's son-in-law is creepy as hell. Yeah, I don't know, feel like that's a contentious one in the comments for you guys down below. I don't know what kind of thoughts crept into OP's mind in this one, that this is still an acceptable situation going on, because that age gap definitely isn't cool. That's an insane age gap. I'm going to throw my own assumptions and judgment out here. Why are they having kids when they're obviously not prepared for it? They can't even afford rent. Why put kids through that suffering? The 22-year-old, yeah, I can give her some flack for that one, but the 30-year-old? The mid-30-year-old putting himself, his partner, his wife, and the kid through this? What is wrong with that guy? Heavy judgment on him. Getting even more attached now that they have the baby in marriage and moving in together? No solutions from this guy? Insane. How OP has done a 180, has turned a new stone. I am so glad I'm not personally involved in this situation, because what in God's name is wrong with all of you? Keep an eye on the guy all you want, but to me, this is deranged. Our next post is by user ThrowRA Not Main, titled, My male 16 pastor shamed my friend, female 16, for wanting an abortion in front of the congregation. I want to be completely honest. One of the main reasons I'm writing this now is because my parents are very upset with me for disagreeing with what happened at church last week. I personally don't think that we should even be going right now, since they're letting 70%-ish capacity into the sanctuary on Sunday mornings, and we live in New York, and the congregation is pretty big. I think this was written during COVID. And while I don't want to name the church, they can fit over 1,000 inside of the pandemic boundaries, but that's not the main thing I want to make this about. A girl in my youth group recently became pregnant with someone who doesn't go to our church. We've talked casually, but we've never hung out outside of youth except for group events. But she's one of the few people who I talk to there, and sometimes in our group chat. And my parents don't really allow me to stay home, even when I ask them to on Sunday mornings or some Fridays. But that's not the point either. I just wanted to add that for context. This past Sunday, the pastor told the congregation that someone in the youth had recently become pregnant and needed prayer along with her family. And while he kept it anonymous, some of the people in our youth group still knew who it was, and this is because her parents told someone that she was contemplating abortion to try and get support for talking her out of it. And she told me this when we messaged a few days ago. When I talked to her, I tried my best to encourage her and say that her parents had no business talking to the church and telling them what should have been kept as a private matter. But she said that she's scared that they won't allow her to have it or may treat her differently if she does. And that they also want her to sit with someone to talk, someone who is a leader in the church. She also said that they keep telling her things about how she lives in their house and other stuff like that, and her dad is also a trustee as well. I told one of my friends from school about what happened, and she said that her parents are probably trying to stall her out of the time frame to have an abortion, and I told her that I didn't really know how all of it worked, but that I just wanted to know more, since she felt comfortable enough to open up to me for some reason, but I didn't really know what to say or how to really help. She also said that they're trying to guilt her out of having it too, and that being in that environment with word of mouth isn't healthy for her either, and that what her parents are doing is borderline abusive. When I talked to my parents about what happened after church, I told them that I didn't think it was proper for the pastor to do that in front of the congregation, but they told me that that's what happens when people sleep around and do things they shouldn't be doing outside of marriage, just like they taught me about purity when I was younger. But I told them that that should have been kept as a private matter, but they said that when someone sins and doesn't listen to their parents, then the next step is to go to the church. And I don't even know if I can trust them in the future to not do the same to me and my private information, if they support telling others about things that should be private. And when I told them that that is part of the reason why I never tell them anything, they just yelled at me and re-echoed shit about me not spending enough time with the family and staying locked up in my room. But that's a whole different thing, and not the point of this. I don't know if I can help her. But since she felt comfortable enough to open up to me, I want to be able to be a friend to her at least. And if there's anything else I can do or say from anyone who maybe has gone through something similar, I would appreciate any advice on how to help her in this situation if she happens to reach out to me again. Edit. I do have a car that my parents bought for me, but she does not. She's 16, but I don't think her parents would help her with the process at all by how they're acting, and I don't know if I can legally by driving, or if that would hurt my living conditions with my parents and how they view me or her parents and the potential boyfriend involved. Although, if she needed someone, I would consider after getting more education and advice on how to do so. In the comments, A Long December says, "That's Christian love and compassion for ya. When you're completely independent of your parents, get out of that death cult." OP says, "I don't know why she reached out to me, but I hope that at the least, just having someone to vent to can be somewhat comforting. The main thing that stuck out from our conversation is how she's afraid that they won't love her anymore or be disowned, to use her own words. And I didn't really know what to say in response to that, besides telling her that I would always be there to talk. And my parents don't really seem like they'd be willing to help much either if it came to that, although I really hope it doesn't. If she feels like abortion is her only option, she needs to start the process now. Tell her not to wait until it's too late. Her parents are shitstains for doxing her like that. I don't know what to tell you. How old is she? Does she have any money for the abortion? Is there a clinic nearby? Does she have access to a car? I really don't think her parents would kick her out, but they're trying to punish her for having sex, which is so sad." OP says, "I don't think, and hope not, that they would either. And my friend from school said that they're probably just trying to guilt her and make her second-guess herself to the point where they just stall to where she has trouble having an abortion. I'm not sure if they would help her given everything they did, like telling her that she lives in their home and telling her medical stuff to the church and demanding that she speaks to a church leader about it. Pre-Regrination replies, I haven't read through all the comments, so I don't know if you've already been given this advice, but since you guys are in New York, she can get an abortion anytime she wants, even as a minor. Parental consent is not required. Please let her know this information. If you can do it discreetly, i.e. without jeopardizing your own situation with your family, you can offer to drive her to the nearest Planned Parenthood when and if she is ready. She will need an ID, and if she can't provide health insurance, about $500 for the fee. It's that simple. I know because I have been in this situation. For a pill abortion, she'll need a couple hours alone in a bathroom while the medication kicks in, and then some menstrual pads for heavy bleeding for a few days. The pill abortion is not particularly painful, it just feels like a heavy period. But this option is only available during very early stages of the pregnancy. The longer she waits, the more invasive the procedures will have to be. Regardless of what happens, thank you for being a good friend. It can't hurt to offer to drive her places. It's not illegal to give her a ride. Planned Parenthood would be a good start to give her a heads up on her choices if she wants to go. Just know that by helping her, you might also be called out in church, and your family might also turn on you for going against them and the church. Good luck to the both of you. And OP says, I'm strongly considering doing so, since she says she feels trapped and has no one else to maybe talk to. I also don't know why she chose to reach out to me, but I'm glad to be able to help her if she wants, or at the very least, just be someone she can vent to. In regards to driving her, I'd be more than happy to, but like you said, I also realize that my parents might hate me for a long time if I do that, and her family might try to get me involved or accuse me of something, along with the boyfriend's, if he is a boyfriend, maybe two. If she didn't tell him beforehand, although I'm not sure if she has to. I'm going to help her if I can, but I also appreciate knowing the consequences of doing so beforehand. And now, onto the update. The only reason I'm updating is because I received a few DMs asking what became of my friend. I didn't respond immediately because a lot happened, but I wanted to vent about it because it still bothers me to this day. I'm 19 now, and so is my friend. I offered to drive her to a clinic as a few people suggested in the comments, but she wasn't comfortable going behind their back. So that was pretty much it, and I don't blame her. She's gotten so much shit from our pastor and her parents, and the boyfriend isn't in the picture. The child was eventually born and later dedicated on a Sunday in our church, and she told me that her parents were the ones who pushed for it. She began working part-time at 17, and her parents punished her for having sex outside of marriage by removing her college savings and not even giving them to her. But another frustrating thing was a post her mum made on Facebook shortly after the pregnancy. In her post, she said that it was important to teach responsibility in a world that taught girls to do the opposite. She said that abortion was the easy way out, and the verse about how she and her house would serve the Lord. She also said society taught girls that they can dress like slalalast and be absolved from the blame when people treat them accordingly. And the whole thing read as damage control and shaming to me. She said she wouldn't allow anyone under her roof to have an abortion, and that's what she did. My friend now works 2 part-time jobs, and I try to help her with small things from time to time, sometimes food or money that her parents won't. My parents disagreed when I told them that they were horrible people for staying in a church that would shame someone like that, but they still attend and said that she shouldn't have dated a worldly person, and the whole thing changed my view of them because they tried to use her to teach me what not to do, and we had an argument when I told them that I'd rather go to hell to be further away from them. It was cringy and extreme at the time that I said it, but I'll never step into a church again. Not saying they're all bad, but I can't fathom treating one of your own the way they did, and she grew up in that church as a child too. I appreciate all the advice I got at the time, and I hope life gets easier for her because things are tight from what she tells me while struggling to move out from her parents. In the comments, Larry Man says, they forced her to have the baby and won't even help with expenses? It's just like the micro-scale Republican economic policy. A friend of mine had a baby at 16 and applied to a Christian high school. The school turned her down, citing their moral code and how she clearly would be a bad influence on other kids since she had a baby. I remember her telling me, the crazy thing is, I could have just gotten an abortion and no one would have ever known, and I could have gone to the school. It's like they're punishing me for keeping my baby. They are punishing her for having sex, and the baby is proof that she did have sex, so they punished her. I hope she's doing okay now. Are you ready to be really angry? NY Daily News, San Diego Christian School allegedly fires a pregnant woman for having sex before marriage. Well, I am indeed really angry. The sad thing is that I'm not even surprised, just disappointed. I died when I saw that they then offered a job to her boyfriend right after firing her for having sex and getting pregnant. Like, he must not have been involved and it's Mary 2.0. Admirable Lie says, what a great guy. I'm loving the fact that there is a lot more empathetic and kind guys like him in the world. I remember when I was growing up in the 2000s, there was still a bit about things being manly and unmanly. And it goes without saying, F those families, church, and pastor. Like, how could the girl's parents stay in that church after the pastor anonymously doxed their daughter from their pulpit unless they enjoy the attention from it? I've known quite a few people who belong to fundamentalist churches, so while I definitely don't condone it, I understand their thinking. The best way that I can describe it is that in many denominations, their churches are like the Puritan colonies, where religion governs everything, and church leaders have complete authority. In order to maintain tight control of their congregations, both the Puritans and some fundamentalist churches today use public shaming and guilt. I'm almost surprised the OP's friend wasn't forced to wear a scarlet letter A on her chest and stand in front of the congregation for hours on end. To the friend's parents and the OP's parents, the real issue is that she had sex, and with someone not a member of the true religion. Everything subsequent to that is a punishment for her lust, and the baby is merely confirmation of her terrible sin. It boggles the mind that someone could put religion ahead of their own daughter, but that's what these folks have been taught. If thy right eye offends thee, pluck it out. I think that's the biggest thing you hit on. She had sex outside of marriage, and they'll hold that against her for the rest of her life, unless they miraculously change. Remember, if she got an abortion, she'd be a social pariah anyways. They wanted to punish her for the rest of her life for this, and I guarantee you the father got off scot-free. And the fact that the parents stayed in the church after the pastor anonymously mentioned their daughter on stage and later allowed an on-stage dedication after the baby was born, which pretty much confirmed the young person pregnancy rumors, probably meant that they reveled in the attention and chance to prove how strict they could be. Hence the mother's Facebook post explaining why she didn't allow her to have an abortion. Anyways, Guy, I hope you have a good day, night's sleep, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.